Within the urban sprawl of any great city, there is an almost infinite number of variations in human behavior. Millions upon millions of people going about their everyday business. Unfortunately, we shall also find gambling, alcoholism, drug addiction, pornography, and every conceivable kind of sexual licentiousness. Recently, a new novelty has been added to this list: wife swapping. While every incident depicted in this film is based on fact, it is only concerned with a minority group. It is an aspect of modern urban life which we present in truth.
Excuse me, are you English?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Could you tell me where you're from?
Brighton.
Brighton. Is this lady your wife?
Yes.
I wonder if you know...
I hope so.
Have you heard about the cult of wife swapping?
Well, we've read all about it, yes.
You've just read about it?
Yes, and talked about it, you know. And...
You've discussed it with your wife?
Yes, this
pure discussion, yes.
Would you consider doing it yourself?
Well, we will consider it. We've talked about this.
You might consider it. I think one should be a little bit more discreet myself, you know. Most men do, from what I've been told. But as far as, you know, man and wife knowing about it, you know, and allowing each partner to do it, I honestly don't know if it comes out in practice.
Would you prefer adultery, perhaps, to wife swapping?
Well, it's been accepted for a long, long time, you know. I think wife swapping is a new thing.
Tell me, I gather the impression that you might have had some experience of this. Would this be fair?
Well, I have been married once before, actually.
That's about as far as it goes.
And what about wife swapping?
Well, we have in Sweden too.
Would you do that in Sweden? What?
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No.
But I think there's quite a lot of people doing it, and yes, married couple, two couples, and they exchange, but people are not bothered about it. It's each individual problem, each fresh.
Everybody has to make up their own mind.
Yes. We're not bothered about it. If people like it, they can have it.
Excuse me. I wonder if you know about wife swapping in London.
Well, we wouldn't know anything about it. We only got married yesterday.
I see.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you know anything about wife swapping? Who's got worse to swap? You don't believe in marriage, in fact?
No, it's a drag, man. It's a drag, you know.
And what does the lady think about that?
Well, nobody gets married now, do they?
So you don't believe in marriage as an institution?
Well, no, so many marriages break up these days, you know. I mean, it's much better just to live with a girl, and then if it breaks down, well, then you part. It's a drag maybe if there's children. It's perhaps a situation that I haven't really sussed out yet. But as far as I'm concerned at the moment, then I'll live with her, but certainly not marry her.
This thing of wife swapping, is this possible in Grand Rapids, Michigan?
Oh, it's happening.
It's happening in Grand Rapids.
Yes.
Wife swapping.
Wife swapping. Do you know about this? Have you read about this in Canada?
I didn't read about that, but I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
I know what I mean.
Would you approve of it or disapprove of it?
Personally, I'll approve it.
You'll approve.
I'll approve.
Is your wife here?
Yeah, she's right there.
Well, I wonder what she would say.
No, I wouldn't like to try it.
You wouldn't like? You wouldn't like to try it. Your husband has just said he would.
But I don't think he will be doing it if I'm not approving it.
I'd like to swap my wife for a new motor.
There is a comforting, if overworked, saying that there is nothing new under the sun. All new phenomena, we tell ourselves, have a precedent in history. People don't change, only circumstance. Indeed, there's nothing new about adultery. They invented adultery the day they invented marriage. What is new, and almost certainly unique in the social history of the Western world, is the prevalent and still growing phenomena known as wife swapping.
It is the first time that anyone does anything that's the most frightening. The fear or the excitement of the unknown complicates and confuses the rational thought processes. I was certainly confused that evening as Paul, my husband, drove me towards my first meeting with an organized wife-swapping club. As we drove nearer and nearer the address we'd been given, my fears grew. I couldn't believe Paul would go through with it. I hoped he would turn the car round and drive me home, where we would both pretend it had been a practical joke to test how far each of us would go. I had always considered us a fairly normal married couple. We had a lovely house, a daughter of 7, and if our marriage wasn't exactly ecstatically happy, whose was? It was, at first, a very ordinary evening. We had had dinner, and Paul was reading our daughter to sleep.
At last the eggs cracked open, one after the other. Beep, beep.
What makes this new sexual license unique is that it is not the indulgence of the idle and idolized, nor is it the immature behavior of teenagers. Our wife swappers are, in the main, drawn from that very strata of society which has previously been considered the very backbone of respectable urban life, the affluent professional middle classes. Paul and Ellen had been married 7 years. All the resentments and frustrations of those years, while Paul was building his career, had led to a slightly fractious relationship in which sexual interest had all but gone. The marriage, which came into being primarily for the sake of the child, is being held together almost entirely because of it. Let us now recreate the moment when Ellen first heard the phrase wife swapping, the time before she came to be riding with her husband toward her first organized club experience.
By the way, Leonard and his wife are coming round.
Leonard?
Yes, Leonard. You remember, the chap with the boat on the river.
When are they coming?
Tonight.
You might have warned me.
Don't start making a big deal of it. They're just dropping in.
It's just that I hate a mess.
Look, there's something I should tell you.
Tell me later. What time are they coming?
Listen to me, Ellen. I've got to talk to you. I'm fed up with our marriage being a pretense for the sake of our in-laws. I want us to find a basis on which we can live together. Do you have any idea when we last made love?
I stopped keeping a diary when I was 15.
Ellen, this is serious.
I really can't see what this has got to do with Leonard and his wife.
Well, if you'd listen, I'd tell you. They had a similar problem.
So?
We found a solution.
Really, what?
We read about it a few months ago.
Read about what?
Well, those clubs.
What are you talking about?
Wife swapping.
My first reaction was one of shocked disbelief. I felt totally betrayed. The doorbell was already ringing, and Paul was answering it. I couldn't focus my mind enough to even think what kind of monsters Leonard and his wife were going to be. My first impressions of them were very hazy. I remember nothing of the introductions Paul made, nor can I remember anything of what anyone said in those first few moments.
Hello?
Well, sit down.
I felt an overwhelming embarrassment over the purpose of their visit.
Now, what do you have to drink? Gin?
I remember Paul asking what everyone wanted to drink, while I sat in desperate panic, groping in my mind for something to say to these strangers that had so suddenly intruded into our lives. Then Paul was asking me to fetch ice from the kitchen.
Any ice, darling?
Okay.
Only later did I know what was said after I had left the room.
Did you ask her? I had when you just arrived. Look, Leonard, I don't want to waste your time like this, but maybe we'd better forget it. Leave it to me. Leave it all to me. Can I help you, Ellen?
This stupid ice guy can never get the ice out.
You can help me do it. I'll fix it. Thawing ice cubes is my speciality. Do you want an ice cube? Just let relax, darling. That's all.
Leonard, I decided, was quite charming, but I couldn't say the same for his wife.
Jean suggested we played poker.
Leonard's wife said very little, but managed to make quite clear what she wanted.
Rush thing, darling.
Nothing wrong with cards, is there?
What does Ellen think?
I don't mind.
What are we going to use for chips?
This place for...
Matches, darling.
What a drag.
At first, the poker session seemed to be quite normal and sociable. We played, perfectly well aware that Jean, Leonard's wife, was growing more restless with each hand. However, as the game went on, I began to relax, and I'd almost forgotten the reason Paul had brought these people to the house. But obviously Jean had not forgotten. She couldn't sit still for long.
What'd you do that for?
Corks.
What? What she means is a cork game. What you have to do is you get two corks. Pass that cork. Now, what you do is you get two corks and you...
I'll show you.
You try.
it's easy. Want to try one? Yeah, go on, darling. No, the other way now.
It seemed a simple, almost childlike game, but it was more difficult than it looked.
Well, what happens if you fail?
You take something off.
All right.
Okay.
I suppose my reasons for playing were simply a spirit of competitiveness, or a feeling of security, a feeling that this was my house, that Paul was my husband, and within these walls nothing disastrous could happen. Maybe it was not wanting Jean and Leonard to know there was any division between Paul and I. They treated it all so casually, as if there was absolutely nothing extraordinary about what we were doing. Maybe it was merely feminine perverseness, of wanting to see how far I would go, or Paul would let me. I felt I was being tested, that this was a game designed specifically to test my nerve. Perhaps I hoped that Paul would see that it wouldn't work, or that he couldn't let it work and he would intervene. Whatever it was, whatever I did or thought of doing, I knew I wasn't going to be the one to call a halt. And in the event, neither was he. When he didn't intervene, but merely looked up at me almost apologetically, I felt as if I had won a great victory. I had plunged, played their silly game, met Jean on her own ground and imagined I was winning. I might even have begun to enjoy it, except that Jean was making plain her one transparent aim: to get Paul.
I always thought you were good at this game.
Who says I'm not?
We saw Leonard and Jean several times after that, and on better acquaintance, Jean and I became good friends. Then Paul, along with Jean and Leonard, started pressing me to join this larger group, of which Jean was a leading member. After much persuasion, I finally agreed. And now this. I didn't want to go through with it. I wanted to ask Paul to turn the car and take me home. But the car was already stopping. There was now no going back.
Not now the friendly exchange between two couples, but a confrontation with total strangers. It is one further stage in the escalation of the pleasure seekers. Paradoxically, although it's the wife who will face the severest test, it's often the husband who will, in the situation, start to have second thoughts.
Are you sure about this?
Don't be silly.
They asked us to wait outside the room. And for the first time, I realized that Paul was more nervous than I. But when the hostess brought us into the room, I suddenly felt quite calm. My first impression was of faces with masked eyes. And behind the eyes, minds assessing me. I sat looking directly back at them, wondering what their thoughts were. As they watched me, I felt a growing sense of excitement, anticipatory excitement. I felt suddenly flushed with confidence, glowing at the focal point of all those eyes. And then a sudden terror, in case no man there would want me. All this time, even though the hostess had been introducing me, I had hardly heard a word she had said.
Like this, we must, of course, proceed with the usual formal initiation of the wife. If any of you know this candidate to be in any way unreliable, indiscreet, or in any other way barred from membership within this group, then now is the time to speak.
There was a total silence. At that moment, Paul might have spoken, and it would have ended there. But he said nothing. I knew then I was going through with it.
In the absence of any objections, we may proceed to initiate the candidate. Candidate, in order to ensure your loyalty and discretion within this group, and before any of us may be permitted to identify ourselves to you, we require a total commitment from you. Do you understand? You may choose your first lover. Disrobe.
The total commitment, the eternal gift, not given to one man in love and trust, but dedicated to a group in cynical lust. Is it only, as Ellen insists, merely a spirit of immature competitiveness? Or are there, beyond mere sexual recreation, more driving psychological forces at work? We asked an eminent London psychiatrist.
There can be many individual reasons for participating in this cult of wife swapping. Without knowing the full life histories of the participants, I can do no more than consider the fundamental and general issues likely to be involved. Primarily, within the sexual relationship of any couple disposed towards wife swapping, there is likely to be an imbalance of sexual needs and enthusiasms. Out of the frustrations that this will create, the idea may grow that group sex activity will improve things. Over the years, there may develop, particularly in the male, a desire for more sexual variations and excitement. In the past, if he couldn't obtain this from his wife, he would have taken a mistress or resorted to a prostitute. And today, with the present fashion for thrill and the efficiency of present-day birth control methods, he might attempt to induce his wife to become a partner in his promiscuous activities. The appeal to the husband in this is that he could gain sexual variation and avoid the complicating guilt that would arise from having an affair. The wife's reaction to such a proposal would be more emotionally complex. She would have her own conscious or unconscious motivations, but initially she would nearly always be submissively indulgent in the interests of her husband's pleasure. Woman's drive for so-called equality means that if a husband finds such activity tempting, she will want to find it equally so. Women are in perpetual competition for the admiration of men, and for self-respect they must succeed to an adequate extent in this competition. This is manifest in the way that they dress for social occasions, and as ever was, vie with each other for the attention of the gallants. In wife swapping, this urge extends from being flirtatious to the display of actual, intimate sexual prowess. And in this, the total effect is only obtained if the husband is fully aware of his wife's success. Her confidence may grow in direct contrast to her husband, who may well, as in the case of Paul, have a mounting sense of doubt and hesitation. All this applies to the case of Paul and Ellen in general terms. But primarily, the appeal of wife swapping can be simply a strong voyeuristic impulse. In the particular case of Paul and Ellen, the sexual interest has fallen to a low ebb, and by their standards, group sex seems to have succeeded. But the most important fact here, primarily, and for the future, is the children of the marriage. Children can be the strongest bond between man and wife.
We now understand something of the fundamental impulses which drive people towards seeking group sex activity. And we've seen how one couple, through the council of friends, found their way into such a group. It is a feature of most couples established in the so-called swinging set that they will constantly seek to involve others, a feature they share with drug addicts and alcoholics.
We hadn't known this couple very long, but when they invited us for a weekend on their boat, we jumped at the chance. Everything seemed to be perfect, even if I was nervous when it was suggested I try my hand at steering. I wasn't used to boats, nor to the close contacts that seemed inevitable in such confined surroundings. Despite this, I couldn't dismiss a feeling that his wife was taking more than a friendly interest in my husband. The atmosphere was unsettling and strange. But this, I reminded myself, was the point. The change from everyday life. It would be silly to spoil it because it was different. To say anything would have seemed ungrateful to two very charming people. But still there was an atmosphere, and I was apprehensive.
The atmosphere that's being created around this young couple is the result of careful and detailed planning. They are far from the routine of household chores and the prying eyes of neighbors. The setting is such that the innocent couple cannot easily pack their bags and depart. They are placed off balance by the unfamiliarity of their surroundings, and what would, under normal circumstances, call for immediate rebuke will cause hesitation and uncertainty.
be divided almost equally between frantic activity and sailing placidly along. Toward evening, I'd almost forgotten my first apprehensions. I was quite relaxed, happy, and content to laze in the sun, until my husband reminded us that it had been a long time since lunch. We moored that evening. It fell to me to prepare the evening meal. An easy familiarity of this task further lessened my fears to the point where they seemed faintly ridiculous. I had, of course, absolutely no idea what was happening elsewhere on the boat. When her husband came forward to chat to me while I worked, I was even pleased that he was taking such a flirtatious interest. I was beginning to think I'd been totally wrong about him. What followed was a shock. There was, of course, only one thing we could do after that. The other couple seemed amused at the way things had gone. They told us that they'd planned it from the start, that they'd done it before with many other couples, and couldn't understand why our reaction should be different. Our married life was such that we felt no need to indulge in such behavior. I couldn't help thinking that they were rather pathetic. There was something desperate in the way they were searching for sexual excitement, something we had found with love in our own marriage.
But what of the many couples who, having taken such a decision, lacked the means to make entry into this guarded, furtive, and transient world? How do they fare on this ground so filled with traps and pitfalls for the unwary?
And by these so-called friendly magazines, magazines for finding friends, sex magazines, kinky magazines. The kinkiness comes out of their loneliness.
What sort of people find a magazine? Just look at it.
Well, this one, you know, the people that come through here, the people that buy this, more or less, I've always thought that they were lonely people.
Just lonely?
Sure, I think so myself, lonely, frustrated, and they're looking for something that doesn't exist.
And they think they might find it in there?
Well, they hope to find it in here. Whether or not they do, of course, is a debatable issue.
How do they go about buying them? Do they buy them outright?
Well, some of them are quite brazen, others take their time, others sort of lay back until I got no customers, and I try to be as helpful as possible by taking their money as quickly as possible. That's a funny fellow. Yes, sir, what would you like? Thank you, sir. Up. Cool. See what I mean? It's not a word. They just come and they're gone and this, that and the other, and they just carry on. Yeah, it's funny. See, he's lonely. See, well, he's hoping for a miracle.
Joe, you're the editor of a contacts magazine in which swinging couples advertise in order to contact other swinging couples. Is that right?
Well, what do you mean by swinging?
I mean married couples disposed towards wife swapping or sex parties, that kind of activity.
This is too broad. You know, I look upon it as being more of a friendship basis, pen pals.
Pen pals?
Yeah.
Well, some of the advertisements do seem a little more than pen pals.
Well, I agree with that. Yes, I suppose I agree with that to a certain extent. But I don't know what goes on. You don't know what goes on.
You don't know what's in the advertisements that you pass on then?
I know nothing. I just pass them on as they are.
You've no idea that the advertisements are genuine or that the replies are genuine?
No, as I say, one can hope that they're genuine.
But do you make any attempt to find out?
I do the best I can.
How many people do you employ?
Well, at the moment, it's just me. I run it single-handed a lot. That doesn't leave me a lot of time to go into complaints.
Oh, I see. What are your relationships with the police?
Well, I hope they're all right. But I do get some trouble now and again. I mean, they come in here and they just walk in here, they pick up everything they can see, and they walk out again, and don't say a word. And they don't even say good morning.
Is this a lucrative business?
Lucrative. No, it's a business. I got a living. I'm not making fortunes.
How did you get started in the business, Joe?
How'd I get started? Well, I suppose by 1953 I was in the Merchant Navy. I left the Merchant Navy in 1953. Had a few friends around Soho. And one of them offered me a job in a bookshop. You know, as a chairman in one of these bookshops.
A chairman? What sort of job is a chairman in a bookshop?
Well, at that time it was more or less like a front. You know, the shop was signing my name, and they'd pay me so much a week, and if the shop got nicked, then I'd have to go up to court, they'd pay the fine, and that was it, all over.
And finally, you got nicked?
Yeah, I got nicked, and I couldn't do it anymore. Then for a time I worked as an assistant in one of the bookshops, but I didn't like it. I don't like handling pornographic gear.
Some of the ads you accept in your magazine suggest that pornography is being offered for sale through your magazine.
Well, as I may suggest, but suggest is one thing, receiving's another, isn't it?
You don't believe that those ads are genuine?
Well, let's put it this way, I hope they're genuine. And if they're not, then I don't know anything about it.
But you say you'll have nothing to do with pornography, yet you hope that those advertisements are offers of genuine pornography.
You know, one can't be certain about these things. One runs a business to best of one's ability.
You're having a little difficulty with the law at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes, I'm having a little difficulty at the moment. I'm being sent up for trial. At the moment, even my lawyer doesn't think I've got a chance. It's charming, isn't it? Like a lawyer's against you as well as the law.
You got no chance?
Well, that's what he says.
What do you think you'll get?
I don't know. I just don't know, you know, that's what I'm choked about.
Well, what is the charge?
Obscenity. They got me on an obscenity charge. The obscenity. I've looked through that. What's obscene about it?
Just ordinary small ads.
It's just ordinary small ads.
I can see some of your advertisements here. For instance, lesbian mother with lesbian daughter. Also, both lovers wishes to exchange letters on the subject of incest and unnatural relationships within the family circle. I have another one here. Young, long-legged, attractive wife loves playing in school uniform. We are keen exhibitionists and do-it-yourself.
I don't expect any medals for this. But you tell me this. What would these people do if they didn't have this magazine to write to? I provide an outlet for them. If they didn't have this outlet, anything could happen.
So, in fact, you consider you're providing a social service?
Yeah, a social service.
Social service? Possibly. But these introductions do not always lead to the ideal meetings between two couples of similar disposition. For some, consequences can be more far-reaching.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming along to talk to us.
That's all right.
You are, I believe, an enthusiastic member of the wife-swapping set.
Well, I don't like the word wife-swapping very much. I prefer to be known as a swinger.
Oh, well, the swinging set.
Yes.
I wonder if you'd like to tell us how you first got into the swinging set.
Well, there were these friends of ours, you know, they sort of suggested we might like to go to a party. You know.
Really? Friends directly to a party?
Yes.
I see. And you went?
Yes. You know, they said we didn't have to join in, but after, you know, we'd had a few drinks and that, and, you know, it just sort of happened. Everybody else was doing it.
And why did you go? What motivated your first visit to a party like this?
Well, things were, you know, getting a little bit tame after you've been married a few years, you know, and you know, things had tamed down quite a bit.
So really you went in search of sexual excitement?
I suppose so, yes.
And how did you feel at the time? I mean, when you were making love with a strange man, a man other than your husband for the first time?
Well, I was a little bit high, but I kept looking round to see whether my husband was watching. He wasn't. He was, well, I don't think he was. Anyway, he was occupied himself.
Okay.
And, you know.
So it never really occurred to you to question his reaction. Did you talk about it afterwards?
Yes, we did. We did talk about it. We found it quite stimulating, actually. You know.
Within your own marital sex life?
Yes, yes.
I see. And you used the past tense earlier. Are you still a member of the group?
No. I thought, you know, some of the men at the parties weren't all that marvellous, and you can't really turn down offers. The first one that asked me was very nice. You know, he's a very good-looking chap, but there's some sort of old ones, and I thought, well, while I was doing it for nothing, I might as well take money for it.
And you did?
Yes, yes.
And in fact, you became a prostitute?
Well, I wouldn't call myself that. It's just people that we know, you know.
People that you know?
Well, yes, men that I've met, you know.
So in fact, instead of now going to parties, you charge to go to parties?
Yes, I suppose so.
I see. What did your husband do?
Well, he was a motorman on the railway.
I see. And what is he doing now?
Well, he's in prison at the moment, you know.
In prison?
Yes. And we got done.
How long did he actually get?
6 months.
Well, it's quite a transition from being an ordinary housewife into becoming a professional prostitute. How did you do this? What made you do this?
Well, we've always spent more than we've ever earned. You know, we've always had money troubles and spent more than we've earned. But we got into a terrible mess financially at one point. You know, we were behind on rates and everything. And I'd been talking the week before to a woman who, you know, said, why didn't I go to some of her parties? The men there paid. They paid £20 a time, and it seemed the solution at the time, you know.
So this woman arranged professional parties for men?
Yes.
Yes. With the appearance of being ordinary swinging parties?
Yes, that's right, yes.
But the men paid?
Yes.
And by this means you, in fact, solved your financial crisis?
Yes, she introduced me to several of her friends, and, you know, they've become good clients.
And now you have this steady clientele?
Yes, yes. They all seem very satisfied. You know.
And I say you seem quite satisfied with your life.
Oh, yes. You know, it has many interesting sides. Occasionally I try to find people on my own, sometimes with a few mistakes. I made one mistake. I found a young boy, and he wanted to beat me. It was rather funny. You know, nothing else, just beat me, and I don't think he wanted to pay me.
He didn't want to pay you?
No.
But you made it quite clear you were now a professional?
Yes.
And if he had paid you?
Oh, yes, that would be all right, yes.
That would be all right?
Yes.
So, in fact, anything goes in your world now?
Oh, yes, I've learned quite a few things.
I see, including the visiting times at the prison?
Yes, unfortunately.
What will your husband do when he comes out of prison?
Well, I think he will find some kind of job.
In fact, he'll be more careful.
Definitely more careful. But I don't think he'll work all that hard. Maybe he'll be a professional photographer or something like that, you know, where, you know, he has some kind of front job.
Just a front?
Yes, just a front.
So you fully intend to continue?
Oh, yes. It'd be silly not to, wouldn't it? No income tax.
You don't pay tax?
Oh, no.
All tax-free?
Yes.
You seem very content and happy.
Well, no, not really. I mean, I haven't got my husband, have I?
No. But much else, it seems.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that you became a call girl and your husband has a criminal record because of the swinging set?
Oh, definitely, yes. I didn't realize people paid that much to have sex with someone anyway, and I wouldn't have dreamt of, you know, gone around finding someone to have sex with. In fact, you know.
Unless the currency of marital sex had been debased by the swinging set.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes, I wouldn't have done it.
Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.
I suspect this woman is much less secure than she pretends to be. But how difficult it is to comment on someone without knowing her or her husband's circumstances. However, it would seem to me that her husband's personality is more directly responsible for the woman's position than she realizes. But of course, any woman can become a prostitute. In fact, in many women there is a latent envy of their more commercial sisterhood. From what the woman says, I judge that they were quite an ordinary couple before their contact with wife swappers. Normal in the sense that they recognized certain moral boundaries. But what is obvious here is that the couple's wife swapping has pushed those boundaries to a point where their moral senses can now encompass prostitution without a feeling of guilt. But it is quite probably more the husband's personality which is the governing factor, a certain weakness, giving up, giving in to the lure of luxury, the ease of life. I judge the woman to be complacently compliant. In a more sensitive or complicated character, this attitude to life would have ended in disaster. Utter disaster.
To feed the ever-deadening senses of the wife-swappers requires new faces, new excitements. It can be a dangerous game, but danger to many is synonymous with excitement, and the jaded palate will go to extraordinary lengths to engender it. This has given rise to an extension of the wife-swapping groups, the Thrill Club. We're in a London discotheque. At this moment, not even our camera crew knew what was to happen here. We'd waited many hours at similar rendezvous when nothing apparently had occurred. All we know at this moment is that something connected with two couples at this table is supposed to happen. This young wife has a sealed envelope, but absolutely no idea what's inside, except that it contains instructions. Sealed orders? That's exactly what they are. Orders to be opened at 10 p.m. and acted upon. These are the rules of their particular thrill club. The envelope is opened. This couple are members of a thrill-seeking Dare Club, constituted with the express purpose of seeing who dare be the perpetrator of the most outrageous conduct, preferably, as here, in a public place. Wife carries out her orders. But such is the progress of the permissive society that such an exhibition as this can occur with hardly more than a ripple of interest. Where once an outraged management might have demanded indignantly that this girl leave at once, she now dances on.
The escalating nature of masochistic demands is well known and can get totally out of control to the point where the victim, the masochist, is reduced to punitive pulp. For a husband and wife to embark on such an adventure, they would require a deep-seated need for such an activity, as I believe the next sequence will illustrate. This is the young lady that we first saw on the bridge in the opening sequence. She waited on the bridge till she was kidnapped and taken to a moored boat to which she swam. Now, what is important to know is how she came to be on the bridge, and, more important, why.
I was alone in the house when the telephone rang. My husband, who's a member of the same thrill club, was quite prepared for me to have adventures outside of our own marriage. He, of course, in return, had many adventures with other members' wives.
Hello?
Hello, Marion. Are you alone?
Yes.
Speak my name, Marion.
Master.
Now I want you to put down the telephone and move closer to the window. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do that, Marion.
Yes.
understand that?
Yes.
Since we're alone, there's no need to be formal, is there?
No.
What are you wearing, Marion?
Housecoat?
Take it off, Marion.
Yes.
To a degree where she must pretend that she has no responsibility for what she does. She is able to enjoy sex without guilt only because she is doing what they tell her to do. It's not her, she can claim, but them. In allowing herself to be so used, she plays with fire. In the name of thrill-seeking, she plays a highly dangerous game. She is feeding the fantasies of others, fantasies of power and control, which, if allowed to escalate, can end in tragedy, because the logical terminal aim of all sadomasochistic relationships is the seeking of total destruction.
This young wife eventually learned a bitter lesson. To gamble with emotion is to hazard sanity. After several adventures similar to this reconstruction, she suffered a total nervous collapse, necessitating prolonged hospitalization. Today, she considers that this collapse saved her from an escalating round of activity from which she may never have retrieved her sanity. It is surely appropriate that the most popular of sex party games should be those that originated in the nursery. There are many variations on these games, and here we see two couples who've come together in order to indulge a taste for blind man's buff. Blind man's buff with additional adult interest. These two couples came together through an advertisement in one of the many introduction magazines. They have nothing in common except an interest in promiscuous sexual activity. Yet both feel the need of the ritualistic opening gambit, a desire for costume, or as in this case, blindfolds to distance themselves from normality. Or is it, in this specific case, merely ritual? Perhaps there is, on one side at least, a more practical reason for the blindfolds. One of these couples, so enthusiastically playing this game, is much blinder than the other. The cables snake towards another room, an even darker room. At this man's fingertips is a closed-circuit television recorder. Every move made in the other room is being monitored and recorded, while every possible distraction is created to prevent one of the couples noticing the squat, unblinking eye of the television camera that observes the technological progress, helps everyone, even blackmailers.
This was our first meeting with this young couple, although we had come to know them well by correspondence. Our previous experience of this kind of thing had been very limited. It was important that the meeting was at their apartment. There were reasons why we couldn't have them to our own home. One night, they unexpectedly rang us and insisted that we come round at once. It wasn't very convenient, but they were so insistent that we finally agreed to go. When we arrived, we found a man we had never seen before, a complete stranger. My husband pointed out that we weren't anxious to meet new people and asked who he was. Our host was evasive. The man himself was offhand and left us to set up something, as he said. We sensed there was something very wrong with this evening, especially when we were invited to watch television. By this time, we were prepared for almost anything. Except what we actually saw. It was quite the most horrifying experience of my life. fact that it was on television made it seem even worse. I had a somewhat irrational fear that it was being transmitted publicly, and I sat wishing the ground would open up and swallow me. Naturally, it was blackmail. We had originally met this couple through an advertisement in a magazine. We'd taken them at face value. An expensive mistake. We had to pay. More and then more, until finally it reached the point where we were forced to move. It cost us our home, many good friends, a great deal of money, and set my husband's career back several years. It was our first experience of the swinging set, and will most definitely be our last. We just hadn't realized we were getting involved with that sort of person.
The phrase, that sort of person interests me. I wonder if the woman were able to look more objectively at herself. Would she realize that to the majority of people, she herself is that sort of person? Retribution came to them in quite a direct fashion. But you know, in this kind of activity, retribution is inevitable. It may come in many forms. There are always dangers inherent in any form of promiscuous activity. The horrors of venereal disease, pregnancies of uncertain paternity, yes, even in the age of the pill. And the most likely source of retribution is the children of the marriage. There are three requisites for the happy maturation of a child: that it knows that it is loved by its mother, that it knows that it is loved by its father, and finally, and this is not always appreciated, that the parents love each other. The children of swinging couples will inevitably find out by intuition, if nothing else. Children are not so blind or insensitive as their parents would like them to be. This will inevitably give rise to confusions and insecurities in the children, creating an emotional backwash that will affect, if not destroy, the fundamental relationship. There are, of course, couples who say they don't want children, either presently or ever. They may reach this agreement early in the marriage, but it is seldom that the paternal or maternal instinct is completely suppressed. More often than not, it is the wife who, knowing that her childbearing days are strictly limited, will be the first to change her mind about having a family. And should the husband find this fulfillment inconvenient with its need to curtail their group activities, then that marriage is headed for disaster. No relationship is so resilient as to withstand the pressures that will build inside a wife faced with such an insensitive partner.
Sheila?
Hello, darling. Won't be a minute.
Hello, darling.
Hi.
And I thought you'd forgotten.
Forgotten?
Our wedding anniversary.
Oh, God. It went completely out of my mind. So that's what all this was in aid of. Our 9th, too.
10th? And I thought we were just going to have a quiet dinner, just the two of us.
No, but how can we? It's our turn. Last Friday in the month, it's our turn to be host. We can't let everybody down, not tonight. Jimmy and Carol are coming. Look, I tell you what. We have our celebration tomorrow night. Promise. But tonight,
The circus is coming to town.
Circus?
Yes, our private sex circus. That's what it's become, Cliff.
Don't be silly, darling. It just happens to be our turn, that's all. Now, look at this. Carol will be mad for this.
To hell with Carol.
Look, darling, don't start spoiling things. Just when we've got a great little group together and everything's starting to be fun.
Fun? Strikes me that without an audience, we wouldn't even have a sex life.
But look, I got this specially for you and Carol.
I changed my mind.
Why?
I'm not a lesbian.
Lesbian? Two girls fooling around?
Suppose I wanted to see you and Jimmy fooling around.
I'm not queer.
Neither am I.
Well, it's different for men.
That's a sweet old-fashioned double standard.
You can't let everybody down. Not tonight.
The show must go on. Mustn't let the side down. Not in front of my friends, darling. I've heard all that blackmail before, Cliff. I've heard it till I'm sick of it. Well, tonight the performing bear takes a night off. The show is cancelled. Got it? Happy anniversary.
There was a sudden silence in my mind. I looked around at all those faces I knew so well. They were all strangers. Every gesture, every smile seemed laden with inexpressible obscenity. Then I realized that I was the stranger. I prayed Carol wouldn't come, and I might be spared this final humiliation.
I wonder what Carol is. She isn't here yet. It's a shame to disappoint everyone. Do you think I should give her a ring?
I shouldn't bother.
Well, I hope nothing's happened. Yeah, I think I will give her a ring. Here we are, darling. She made it. I'll get you a drink, shall I? Scotch, all right?
Yes, thanks. Lovely dress, darling. Can hardly contain myself. Try getting canned.
Try and look as if you were enjoying yourself.
I'm not, so why should I?
Here you are, darling.
What time does the show start?
Come on, Sheila. It's up to you. You're the hostess. Okay, circus lovers. You'll get it. Set the lighting, darling. Put your hands on your head, darling.
Sheila, face her towards us.
Animals. Animals, all of you. Pawing, scratching, tearing each other to pieces. You've taken the act of love and dirtied it. You've taken a private moment and made it a public spectacle. You've taken something precious and meaningful and made it obscene. But I'm tired of my house being used as your farmyard. And I'm tired of seeing myself and my friends used as bills of exchange. And I'm sick. Sick. Sick of the lot of you. And you can get out. Out. Go and foul somebody else's nest.
Oh, wait. It's my house, too. These are my friends. They didn't ask for any time. Thanks, Mother Fella.
No? Let me give them what they did ask for then. Get out. Go and foul somebody else's nest. Get out. Get out. Get out of my house.
They've gone.
Good.
You have effectively lost us most of our friends. I suppose you know that. What was it you called them? Farmyard animals? Well, you behaved exactly like one. Did you have to make your demonstration so public? Did you have to make it in front of all our friends?
I've tried to talk to you alone. Time after time. You wouldn't listen.
All right. I'm listening now.
I've said enough.
To them, maybe, but not to me. Well, what was it? Pride? Jealousy? Or just plain bloody-mindedness?
I'm just tired of being pushed.
Pushed? Well, I seem to remember that it was you who said that sex could be a recreation as long as we had each other.
Loved each other.
I didn't know that had changed.
You don't love me anymore, Cliff. You just like what I do.
Oh, look. We did nothing that we hadn't agreed on. Well, tonight, perhaps, but well, that was because it was arranged, expected, had been for weeks, and you knew that. Apart from that, it was fair exchange.
But it's not a fair exchange, Cliff. It can't be. Between a man and a woman, sex has a different meaning. All a man has to consider is if a woman is attractive enough. But a woman must ask herself if she'd want the man's child.
Oh, for God's sake, what are you suddenly? A nest builder? This is the day of the free, swinging, permissive woman.
She doesn't exist and never did. All women got was the vote and the pill. Thanks very much. That's not evolution, Cliff. It changed the way they live, not the way they are.
Is that what you want? Is that all any woman wants from life? Emotional security for happy pregnancies?
It isn't what she wants, it's what she is. A woman isn't a sex machine. She's a child bearer. It's the fact of life. And until you understand that about women, you'll understand nothing.
Well, what about the other women there tonight? What makes you different?
There's no difference. I just spoke the truth tonight, Cliff, and there wasn't a woman there who would deny it. And if you can't see that, or don't want to, then there's nothing left.
What does that mean, for God's sake?
It means you can divorce me. God knows you've enough grounds.
And so we have come full circle. We saw the young couple at the beginning and their introduction to wife swapping. We followed other cases illustrating the propensity for escalation and the final crushing effect such activity will have on marriage. In this particular case, Cliff is a manifestly narcissistic and indulgent personality. He won't take the responsibility or make the sacrifice involved in having children. The need for greater and greater sexual license will propel him along the road of escalation, and he will not hesitate to divorce Sheila to attain those ends. Sheila, persuaded into swinging by Cliff and in the expectation of some mysterious or temporary thrill and excitement, became more and more disillusioned and trapped, until eventually she realized that artificially induced lust is not an adequate substitute for real love. It dawned on her too late that her husband's standards were as superficial as the rest of the group. Within these groups, innovations have to be devised repeatedly to satisfy the craving for new sexual adventures. Erotic stimulation increases surreptitiously, but it must reach the summit and become boring. The participants will then have to look for more florid sexual extravaganzas somewhere else, or retire finally into their own exclusive marital relationships. All of these sexual adventures are searching for something, unconsciously searching for something they have lost, or perhaps, and this is the tragedy, something they have never found: a secure emotional relationship. To seek such a relationship within group sex activity is to bet on a three-legged horse.
Any number of couples can participate in this new permissive novelty. But the game they play is a game of escalating risk and ever-diminishing return. They will stake everything in a game where the winners gain nothing and the losers lose all.
You had a home in a quiet street, watching children play, where every day was yesterday, tomorrow. And you would know what you know now. Would you still choose this way and play the game that had no name to you but sorrow? You learn to borrow love today, give it back now. It's your turn to play and joker to the pack. Don't turn around, I'm sure you found you're justified. The reason you stand looking down, watching life twist by, you're alone as you wait to meet whatever price you pay for yesterday. Don't think of tomorrow, you know. If in the end time has shown it's really like they say, to keep the love you had to borrow.